Somebody said feed them peanuts with elephants. No, it's not true. It's not true.
Okay.
All right.
Welcome, everyone, to the continuation of the Delaware County budget hearings. And today we have with us Sheriff Russ Martin. And I will let you introduce any staff members you wish, Sheriff, but the mic is yours.
Okay, thank you. I think this is the 11th time I've presented a budget before this, not this particular Board of Commissioners, but the Board of Commissioners, and obviously before this board now for several years. So I always open up. I'm grateful to work with your county administrator. We have a wonderful professional working relationship, and grateful for her and her staff as they've worked with us as well. Obviously, you know, my Chief Business Officer, Dean Stelzer, he's here today. I think in the last 2 years, you've gotten more detailed budgets from me than in the previous 9 to that. So I think that's a credit to having, you know, a competent financial director with his experience at the municipal and government level. So Dean's really put the bulk of this together, and so if you have any particular questions on the org keys or lines, I mean, he can certainly address those specifically. I've asked my executive team to be here, and if there's an operational question, they're all available. Andy Farrow is IT, you know, John Scowden, Chief Deputy John Scowden, Chief Deputy Dave Wiseman, Jeff Balzer and Jill Jones, who's recently been elevated to a director and taken on more responsibility in the office, both in the dispatch and in the records division. So anything that I can't answer, the brain trust behind me certainly can do that. So I hope by now you've at least seen what Dean has put together and our office has provided in regards to just kind of our overall annual work plan. And I'm not going to speak from that in particular. I'll you know, talk a little bit about how do I get this. I'll pull this up, Sarah. Okay. We'll talk. I have a very shallow deck here to go over, but I really am hoping to capture some of the highlights of the budget. We are fully aware that you have tough decisions to make in determining what slices of the pie get doled out to other elected officials and directors in this county. I think we're fortunate in this county. I've been saying this. I shared with Barb Lewis coming in here that the County Commissioners State Conference is going on down at Nationwide, the training center, and I had an opportunity to address them today, and I told the other 87 clerks there that they were in the best county in the state of Ohio, and I truly feel that way. But you know, the budget that I've presented to you, it hasn't escaped me. It's an ambitious budget, and so I'm hoping to kind of capture some of those things that have impacted the budget that we've presented for you, to give you kind of some framework in regards to what we're dealing with and what we've presented. So one of the things that want to share with you is just kind of trends. I won't spend a lot of time here. I think you've probably heard some of this, or maybe even have some concerns about some of these things yourself as county commissioners. But you know, we're finding that the bulk of our significant repeating criminal activity is coming from outside the county. You know, our jail is an indicator of that. Anywhere from 40 to 60% of, or over 50% of our inmates are not even from this county, and primarily from Franklin County and sometimes Marion County as well. So there's, we all experienced, unfortunately, last year, for lack of better terms, 4 running gun battles on Polaris Parkway. While it's in the city of Columbus, it's in Delaware County, and I think a lot of residents have expressed concern about ongoing criminal activity making its way you know, from the metropolitan region in central Ohio into the suburbs. And you know, I think there's been a lot on the news in recent months about all the counties that are contiguous to Franklin County. And so we've experienced some of that ourselves. The last data that I had, that 70% of the stolen vehicles that were recovered, 70% of those were recovered inside of Columbus, and those are stolen vehicles from Delaware County, found their way into Columbus. So just an indication that, you know, most of those folks are coming into the county and seeking a target-rich environment and committing offenses, and then either returning to Franklin County or maybe getting arrested up here and finding out that the justice system is administered perhaps a little bit differently in Delaware County than it is in Franklin County. I do want to talk about you know, staffing. Obviously, a large percentage of the Sheriff's Office budget is around personnel. And so I'm hopeful in the little bit of time that I have with you to kind of address some of those things. One of the things that Mr. Benton is, we've talked about in recent budget presentations in the past, are those unfilled vacancies. And we have 20 of 64 correction officer positions that are currently vacant. We've hired over 20 new corrections officers in 2022, but unfortunately, we've lost 28. So, you know, there's a cost associated with that when you have turnover. You know, the hiring and vetting process, you know, bringing those people on, the recruitment, the training. It's just a really expensive proposition to continue to try to backfill those vacant positions. In regards to deputies, we've had fewer interested individuals seeking law enforcement careers. We're just finding that and I think this is consistent across the board, in the labor pool altogether, but also in law enforcement, the qualified candidate pool is just becoming more shallow. And we're finding, whether or not it's a direct result of what's been said about law enforcement in the last 3 or 4 years, you know, change in interest of the labor force, less people entering the labor market. All of the law enforcement agencies in Central Ohio are competing for the same candidates out of a fairly shallow pool. And one thing that this office has done, and I've talked about it for over a decade, is we have, since I came here over 10 years ago, determined that we're not going to compromise on the quality of candidates that we hire. So we are hiring, in the last decade, the Delaware County Sheriff's Office has hired more college graduates, more well-qualified candidates than at any time previously. And we're frankly competing against the Westervilles, the Delaware cities, the Genoa Townships, the Dublins of Central Ohio. And that continues to be a challenge. And as I talk to colleagues around the region and across the state, it's pretty consistent as well. We are seeing an uptick in turnover, particularly among entry-level positions. And, you know, that's a concern too, is that, you know, you lose that institutional knowledge, you train people, and then they're gone. Year to date, we have hired over 35 new employees at the Delaware County Sheriff's Office, 35 new employees. Unfortunately, we've also had 39 employees separate from us this year, you know, and in that amount is the 28 from the corrections officers. So, you know, that has a direct impact on our budget, has a direct impact on our operation, has a direct impact on overtime and staffing. So I think some of those things are embedded throughout this budget, and I wanted to just really kind of reinforce those are some of the things that are driving the cost of our budget up a little bit. In an effort to deal with that, we've have presented for you an opportunity to add an administrative assistant to help with recruiting, scheduling, and interviews, among other duties, just to continue to help the HR function to get those new hires picked up. While we don't need to necessarily spend a lot of time on it today, I do want to share with you that we are very interested in pursuing the establishment of a training academy. One of the things that has really handcuffed us, no pun intended, is that the availability of academy training for new hires among certified deputies or police officers is very limited. It's limited right now to the Columbus Police Department's Academy, the Ohio State Patrol Academy, and on a very new entry level, the Columbus State University. But most of those, the Columbus Police Department in particular and the Ohio State Patrol, have capped the amount of candidates that we can send there. Plus then we are beholden to their timeline. So we can identify qualified candidates, but we might not be able to get them into their academy until several months down the road. We run the risk of losing those candidates in the interim period, and it also contributes again to our unfilled vacancies and the operational impacts that that creates as well.
Sheriff, are there other academies in Ohio or outside Ohio that
We,
have capacity?
well,
That makes sense. I mean, they
yeah,
could
there's an
work.
academy in Newark. What's the name of that academy, Dave? COTC. We did hire a young lady who just graduated from all the way down in Newark. Some of the law enforcement agencies are actually sending, I think Hamilton County has an academy, and maybe I think Dayton PD. I mean, the problem is so challenging for law enforcement agencies in Central Ohio that they're literally paying room and board for these people to attend academies all the way down in Hamilton County or Montgomery County. So, you know, we haven't done that yet, and you know, so that's something that, you know, we're hoping that we don't have to look at. We like the idea of having them in our backyard, and obviously, if we were able to have an academy in-house, we can begin to use that process to ingrain in them our culture, and we've got hands-on training with them early on. To meet some of these challenges in regards to personnel, we've begun to implement some changes to our wage and benefit for non-union employees. As you know, we have 5 collective bargaining agreements inside the Delaware County Sheriff's Office. Those were established long before I got there, but we have another fairly large work group that is not unionized. And in an effort to retain those, we've begun some retention incentives that have been added that are similar to some of the non-union benefits. I think I provided that information to you in recent months. We understand that the county is also putting together a wage review, but we've begun to look at creating some place some wage tables for our various non-union employees. One of the things that we've heard from them is that once they enter a position, they don't feel an opportunity to advance within that position. So I've tasked both HR and Dean from the Chief Business Officer to take a look at what we might do as regards to wage scale and tables. Based on internal meetings with staff, the lack of progression in positions beyond annual cost of living increases was cited as a weakness of the office, impacting morale, and it was creating staff turnover when we did our exit interview. So again, we're trying to reduce some of that, but there's a cost associated with that. I know that earlier this year, we had a wage reopener in our deputy ranks, and while I understand the county administrator made the announcement to you folks, we did provide for them larger than the general increases to the non-union staff. As I shared with you earlier, that those percentage increases were to keep us competitive with the law enforcement market, even in our own backyard. Genoa Township, Powell Police Department, all those agencies are frankly paying more than the Delaware County Sheriff's Office. So we tried to continue to incentivize. Wages aren't everything, but they are something. And we're finding that particularly for a lot of our younger employees, they're looking for opportunities to, you know, maybe take advantage of the current market. The intent of that was to keep pace with compensation and benefits, which is important to attract qualified candidates in that ever competitive market. So those are just a few things that I wanted to address in regards to on the HR side of it. This slide here includes that discussion on the limited availability of peace officer training academies. We have current vacancies in our patrol ranks. The next available academy, I believe, is in December. we'll be getting a couple of them, and that's with the Ohio State. But again, that's capped. We can only get so many into that. And then I've included here there's been some changes in legislation in regards to what gets reported to Jobs and Family Services and how that is handled. But we've seen an increase in Jobs and Family Services referrals regarding crimes against children to our detectives division, and those were very labor-intensive criminal investigations. This next slide talks about the service level delivery model. I really think this is something that I'm anxious to work with the commissioners on. As this county continues to change from a primarily rural county to a more suburban and maybe even some level of metro county, many of our residents in our high density townships are requesting more from the sheriff's office than what the sheriff's office has traditionally provided. And by that I mean the fundamental service of just responding to crime. The residents in Orange, Liberty, and in Concord Township are requesting on a regular basis routine traffic enforcement in their residential areas. And that's what they're accustomed to in Powell, Genoa Township, City of Delaware, the municipalities that they come from. And in those unincorporated areas, they're asking the sheriff's office to provide the same level of policing that those communities are accustomed to. And I think that's something that we probably need to discuss, and I've had those conversations for a decade now with the township trustees, and they just go back and forth. Nobody's prepared to put both feet in the water and talk about contracted law enforcement services. But our message has been to them that we have been funded, and I've been comfortable in saying this, that this board has funded us at a level to provide good quality law enforcement services throughout the county, but not funded us to take it to the next level, which is community policing, which is more and more becoming the expectation, particularly in that southern tier of Delaware County. I think that also addresses the idea that the expectation of what we provide in the schools with our school resource officers. The 2023 budget includes 6 new deputies and a sergeant position based on requests from the county schools. It is highly likely they will be requesting more deputies in the future. We've had meetings with Big Walnut School District, their Board of Education, Buckeye Valley, and Olentangy. And every one of those districts has talked about adding additional school resource officers above and beyond this 6-person request here. And obviously some of this was driven by the tragedy in Uvalde, Texas. And when the General Assembly allowed the possibility of arming staff to protect students, it opened up a whole nother Pandora's box with school districts as to what is the best model of safety and protection. And most of these districts are falling down in Delaware County. Most of them have fallen down on the value of the school resource officer. And I do think it's a testimony to the competent, professional school resource officers that we've put in place in whether it be at the Career Center, Big Walnut, Buckeye Valley, or Olentangy. And because we've done a good job there, they want more of it. And again, there's a cost associated with that. In addition to those new positions, the 2023 budget proposes a new org key for the SRO operations. The 12 existing positions and 7 new positions are included in this budget. The budget includes approximately $55,000 in uniforms. That's an initial outlay cost of those positions, equipment, training, and $178,000 to increase our cruiser fleet because we're potentially adding more staff. Those are all things that have impacted this budget that we're presenting to you this year. We continue to receive requests from elected officials in and for increased proactive policing services in the townships and villages. And we have tried to do some of that with our current budget, but I don't want to use the term overwhelmed, but I will tell you that we're inundated with those requests. And we've discussed increasing, and you have been a part of these discussions as well, security demands for the courts and our other county buildings. We see those as welcome challenges because we believe that your Delaware County Sheriff's Office is doing a pretty good job of providing and delivering those services, and as a result, we find ourselves in more demand. So it's a good problem to have as a sheriff, but it does have an impact on our budget, and that's, should be, that's presented in this year's budget as well. We continue down the road of accreditation, and the clock is ticking on CALEA and the Rape Elimination Act and the American Corrections Association, and we anticipate full accreditation in all three of those areas, and whether it be in next year or the following year, we are on track to receive that accreditation in all those areas as well. The 2023 budget requests an additional court services sergeant position to help address changes in the courts building and provide adequate supervision. There's already 13 court deputies over there. We talk about span of control and making sure that supervision is adequate there. We're requesting 3 additional patrol deputies for 2023 to help address the increased demands for policing services and to help us stay above minimum staffing levels for patrol. I want to interject here that our deputy labor force continues to stay at about 3 to 4 years of, on the average, of experience. So it's still a relatively young force, complement of deputies. We've had retirements in recent years, and the demographics of the Delaware County Sheriff's Office has begun to change in the last couple of years. I've addressed that before this board with recent budgets. The other thing that's not captured, but is a reality, is that as a result of having a larger, younger workforce and a diversified workforce, that they're starting new families, which takes young female deputies out of the workforce for a period of time with maternity leave, and husbands the same, whether or not their spouses are having babies as well. So all these things are having an impact on us operationally, impacts our overtime budget, impacts our staffing levels as well. And it's just something that happens when your workforce changes from an older workforce to a younger workforce. The increased number of SROs and court service staff not only creates challenges with hiring, it creates challenges with staffing the patrol division as staff are moved from patrol to the other deputy assignments, including the SROs, to fill vacancies. Those positions are all vetted. We have a process that works with each school district to make sure the right deputy is in the right position. And as I noted before, the current average years of service for our patrol deputies remains at less than 4 years. So they're a young, competent group, but they require oversight and auditing, and that's why we have the supervision that we have built into our budget. In the last couple of years, there's been high expectations placed on law enforcement in regards to their training. That impacts our budget. We want to continue to thank this board. We have one of the few state-of-the-art simulated training opportunities currently housed down at the Board of Developmental Disabilities. We'll be moving that sim training up to our new facility. There's footprint there at the Career Center. And our intent then is to see that we receive more simulated training and more firearms training in upcoming 2023. We are hopeful that the creation of a training academy facility and a possible relocation of the firing range will be able to be more effectively address staffing and training demands. As I suspect you know, with the expansion of Rumpke, there's been an impact on our current training facility, our range, and so we've had some talks with the county administrator about the need to look earnestly into moving that at some point in the near future and finding the best place for that as well. That is a fast overview of a lot of issues and trends that we think are woven throughout this budget. As Dean has reminded me a couple times, it's an ambitious budget. We know that the percentage increase was higher than what you initially requested of us. And So respectfully, we've presented what we think are, addresses a lot of these needs, and, but we know you have tough decisions to make, and we think, as I've been saying for the last couple of years, we think we're the best sheriff's office in the state of Ohio, if not one of the best sheriff's offices in the state of Ohio. We don't get there without appropriate funding, and this board has done that for this office for the last several years, and I'm grateful for that. And I always tell people in the community that this board has been supportive of the sheriff's office. I know I've asked from you again a large bite of the apple this year, but we stand ready to answer any questions that you might have about our budget, anything that we can do to provide information that will help you to make the best decision, not only for the sheriff's office, but for the whole county. So.
Any questions?
Just look at me, I guess I'm supposed to go first. Obviously, we're in the process of getting into a new building, and costs are going to be an issue, and we are going to need to work closely together to get a budget we can all live with. Unfortunately, I left my notes downstairs, but so I'm speaking from memory, but the training academy, is that in the budget? That's just something you're wanting?
It's not currently.
Okay, it's not in the budget, okay. So I really want to stick with things that are in the budget, because we'll have those conversations later. The practice range, is that in the budget, or is that?
No.
Okay. Just want to make sure that those issues. You have a number of openings, and you're going to have openings, so I suspect we're going to be asking you to look at what, you're not going to be 100%, so we'll probably be, our administrator will be getting with you to have that conversation, and we want the best sheriffs in the county, in the counties in Ohio as well. The community policy, community policing, excuse me, that's always been, when we had those conversations, it's been a relationship with that township and a sharing of the cost. Is that how you view that going forward?
Yeah, that's what I've always addressed. I think the key is, I've been saying this for 10 years, is getting those decision makers at the table, and obviously with input from the commissioners, what those contracts look like. And frankly, since Dean's been here, we've had, I thought at times, earnest conversations with Orange Township, Liberty Township, and even some with Concord Township. We've recently been out twice to Scioto Township, right, and to Ostrander. So those requests, as we know, that area is going to expand as well. But no, I would see that as a shared cost has been my proposal.
And if I remember back when we did this for Orange, it was 2 to 1 roughly, wasn't it? About 2 to 1? Two-thirds to the township, 1/3 to us. Is that correct?
Well, I'll tell you, I think, there was, my predecessor was the sheriff that entered into those agreements with Orange Township. I understand historically he didn't have input from the county commissioners. And I think when I got here and looked at that, it was about almost 50-50 or perhaps 60-40.
60-40 county or 60-40
60-40 county.
I don't think that was ever the intent. But that's a conversation. That's not in the budget either, right?
No.
So those are conversations we need to have when appropriate. The townships do have to play a role in that. And when I've had conversations with them, there's always been a reluctance to contribute what we might consider the fair share. They may view that differently, and that's a personal thing. And the school officers that we put in, the resource officers, the schools contribute to that. I don't remember the percentages.
They cover 50% of the
50-50.
wages and benefits. When you add in training, vehicles and all that, it probably comes out to where they're paying maybe 35-40% of total cost.
Well, I think we'll shoot for a goal of 50-50, including everything, because if you don't include all the cost, all the costs should be included, from my perspective at least. I'm going to look at your budget in a little more detail. I know the administrator will be getting back with you. I appreciate you being here, and again, we do have an outstanding sheriff's department. You know how I feel about that. And but we have got a difficult budget this year, and as you use your word, ambitious. we've got some things we have to take a look at, so those are my thoughts.
Commissioner Benton?
Yeah, again, I wouldn't say that we have one of the best sheriff's offices in the state. I think we have the best sheriff's office in the
Thank you.
state.
Yes.
I very proudly say that. And to you and your team, great work. Yeah, Commissioner Merrill's right. We don't have unlimited, we got X dollars of revenue coming in that we can budget with, and we got requests that exceed that, obviously. We will work on ways to close the gap. But I want you all to understand, if you know, things come together and you're able to be fully staffed or nearly fully staffed and you look like you're gonna need a supplemental, please talk to us. We'll be glad to sit down and work with you. And we tend to budget conservatively on the revenue side too, quite honestly. So revenue hopefully will continue to come in stronger than it has, or than it was budgeted. So, but just a couple other questions, Sheriff. The kind of, on Commissioner Merrill's comment too, community policing, you know, I've had a number of conversations with the township trustees as well, and I encourage them to try to figure out a way to make it work, because it would be a whole lot better, I think, for everybody, and cost-wise, certainly, to share the costs instead of them creating their own department, because that's gonna cost a whole lot more than adding some deputies and maybe some supervision and so on. So, again, I encourage them to work with you as well. It doesn't seem to have panned out yet, but I know that those discussions are going on, so that's good. Bixby campus, how's that coming along? What do you think? You know, how are you preparing for that?
Well, we've been working with John Melvin closely, you know. He updates us on a monthly basis, and I think I speak for everybody. We're excited about the opportunity to move into what I would say, and I don't mean with any disrespect, long overdue professional facilities to accommodate a professional law enforcement agency. And so I think we're excited. I've got men and women who've never experienced what it's like to walk into a locker room and change a dirty uniform, or to be able to shower before or after work. So I mean, just those, what might seem like small things, are going to be huge amenities. And frankly, the centralization of a lot of our functions, not all of them, but the centralization of a lot of our functions, we think will enhance our, the ability to manage the workforce. You know, I've been saying it for a long time, to be able to leave my office and to walk through a building and be able to touch and talk to, touch in a figurative sense, not literally, each different division is something that I don't have now. I've literally got to get in a car and drive someplace to see somebody. So that will be a significant upgrade. We're going to continue to always have, and we're in the process of evaluating our needs at the jail, you know, and there'll be capital needs ongoing out there as well. But we're excited. We think Bixby is going to be a huge enhancement to what we already provide.
Yeah, and I would be the first to say you have been extremely patient as we've worked through this process. And again,
There was an order of things, and obviously.
yes, I appreciate it. Yeah, the office you're in isn't right, but you've been very patient, and we appreciate that. And
Well,
we're very excited as well. We think
Yes.
we should have the sheriff's administrative building be top notch, and it looks like it will be. So
We're looking
We
forward to the
appreciate
ribbon cutting.
just in general, whether it's the jail or the training academy, have you considered regionalization, working with other counties, other cities, et cetera, to make the economics, I know we have a jail that right now, and it looks like it will for a while, has some capacity. I know we're understaffed, but we do have capacity in there. Is there a way of working with other other counties, not townships necessarily, but cities, et cetera, whether it's a training academy or the jail?
Well, on both fronts, and Jeff Balzer and I were just talking about this recently in regards to, first of all, about the jail. And, I know Jeff reached out, talked a little bit about the capacity in Knox County and Morrow County and staffing and all that. Very preliminary. So we are talking about that internally. There's a lot of things to consider when that happens. You got to look at geography because you're transporting inmates to and from court, and there's an impact, operational impact on that as well. And so, yeah, we've had some discussions on that, but they haven't, I would say, they haven't been earnest to the point we've begun to look at what that would entail, but we've talked about that. The academy, while it's not a part of this budget, we've had a lot of discussion on that, and I will tell you the numbers that we've provided to your administrator and the operation is flexible enough that it could easily move into a regional academy if that opportunity presented itself. So what we've provided is a very flexible model that up and running could be modified at any point or could be regionalized at any point as well.
I assume other jurisdictions are having the same issue, getting their deputies into the training academies?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would be disingenuous if I didn't say that the Westerville Police Department is looking into this as well. So again, you know, we've talked about, you know, at some point, you know, there was some early discussions with Columbus State, but it's one thing to talk about, it's the second thing to get it all up and running. But, you know, without sounding like I'm beating a dead horse, again, the numbers we did provide to the county administrator and the operational vision could be regionalized without much, I think fairly easily.
Good to hear. That's all I got. Again, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your work. Great team.
Thanks.
Absolutely. I know in speaking with your programming director, Cassie Neff, who does just an excellent job, in particular the LINK program that's been so successful in giving people the help that they need so that they don't keep returning to the jail. One of the things that she's run into with the size of the jail is that there really is need for a bigger room for people to meet because there are people on waiting lists now. And I know I was even going to talk with our deputy director and counsel, Eric, about this too. But that is one thing that I think is really necessary, and seems, you know, hopefully we can work something out of that. I realize there's security concerns if we would move that from the jail right now, but I just mentioned that too, and I haven't talked with Chief Balzer yet about it either, so.
We are, I mean, you know, we've recently done a space use study. Jeff, is there any results on that back yet? Anything you want to address?
We actually had a draft of the plan a couple weeks ago. We're meeting with the architect tomorrow to kind of finalize that. And that's part of it, to have more space in there for programming at the jail.
Oh,
too.
that's great.
Yes, we should. It's obviously late for this budget process, but part of it kind of depends on the other half of the building being available to us and how we work with that. So that'll be something we will present then.
Right, thank you,
You're welcome.
thank you. You're always on top of things, but
I do
I-
have one other thing to get there.
sure, I just want to say thank you so very much, and you just to everyone, and excellent sheriff's department. I mean, we couldn't ask for anything more, and our residents feel the same way.
Well, Commissioner Lewis, I know you've always been interested in what we're doing in the jail. We've always appreciated your support in that capacity too. And I do want to interject that the capital needs of the jail are not going to go away just based upon, I've said this before, based upon bed capacity. So we're anxious to see what the space use study reveals. We'd be interested in looking at more opportunities for training and programming in that jail. But as we continue to have staffing issues in the jail, you know, the part of the solution might be, you know, how that jail is designed. And so there may be a capital need, you know, to change some things at the jail to help accommodate the staffing going forward over the next 10 years. something I think the commissioners ought to be aware of. You know, I wish
Sure.
I could tell you, we've got bed space, I'm never gonna need to modify that jail, but I think there's still some, and the jail's starting to get dated as well too, but,
Okay,
it's
great.
not so much in this year's budget, but.
Commissioner
Just a
Merrill.
comment, and you can tell me I'm all wet, but as we have needs up there, we have to remodeling. I'm not sure housing federal prisoners is really a financially viable thing for our county. If it means having to do X number of dollars of work, it may be we should just stop taking federal prisoners. That's just an observation, but I don't think we should assume we're gonna continue to take federal prisoners just because.
We have, actually, I talked to the jail director, Carifa, this morning about this. We were talking about it. Right now, I believe we just took a couple more. We've got about 12. I think we have 12 federal. So it's down a lot from several years ago. We had 70, which is way too many. It's a handful. You know, it's a philosophy. We're doing a service for the government. Obviously, it contributes to the money we take in here too. So if that's a concern, you know, certainly that's a discussion point. They haven't taken up an inordinate amount of time or effort from our staff at this point, but that could always change too. So right now, it seems to be working what we're doing.
Yeah, my point is, we should just assume we will continue because it should be looked at, and that's what you're saying.
Oh, I agree. I agree. And in fact, I've got a meeting tomorrow with U.S. Marshals. We routinely meet with them just to discuss these issues. But it's not something we've looked at, trying to fill up our jail with federal prisoners, because that has a whole host of problems it brings with it. So right now, I think we're fairly comfortable. We will continue to address it.
But I can see the federal government using us as a cheaper way of handling prisoners rather than doing it themselves. And I guess that's an observation of concern. And with inflation and everything going on, and I assume we're also looking at what we charge those federal prisoners per day.
We do. Our current rate is 83, and we're in a contract. When you revise your rate with the federal government, you have a lot of work. We did that 2 or 3 years ago. Went through a company that helps.
This federal government's inflation is immediate, so
Correct. I believe we're locked into that rate for at least 3 years, but we are certainly available, whether it's next year or the following year, to seek another increase.
thank you. Oh, I do, one other thing, this is more philosophical, you can't do anything, I can't do anything. Medicaid on the part of the jail, when you go into jail, you're no longer under Medicaid. We all need to work on that, that's something it makes philosophically absolutely no sense.
I totally agree. That's
So
an
just a
issue we
statement,
face
we
on-
all have a lot to do in getting that changed, so.
I agree. They still have the same needs they do on the outside. In fact, most of our jail population tend to ignore their medical concerns when they're out on their own. And when they come to the jail, that's when we have to take care of all of them. And as we've seen recently with one of our inmates, those costs can be enormous. And for the county to have to pay those, I think that the federal government should still continue that program when they're incarcerated.
Yeah, just being inside a different building doesn't change your health
I agree.
situation.
I
So,
agree.
Anyway, that's something we're gonna solve today, but we've all gotta work on that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's definitely one of our priorities, to the justice and public safety nationally and statewide. So, thank you so much. Really appreciate all you do, and having you come in today too, so we can get a good view, a good overview.
Well, I realize that's a, kind of a flyover, what I provided for you in a limited amount of time with an ambitious budget. But I think your county administrator would affirm that we're available to answer specific questions.
Okay.
Dean knows this budget forward and backwards. And, I've had assurances from this board and from previous county administrators and from this one as well, that, if during the course of the budget year, we're able to capture hiring opportunities, that this board has indicated that they'd be willing to make supplementals. I didn't have that confidence maybe 10 years ago when I first got up here, but I certainly have that confidence today, and that's built upon the trust. I think
Sheriff, we had that
that's-
conversation in some form recently, and it's hard for us to even think of a situation where we have not done that.
Yeah,
with you or other departments. So feel reassured that we're very open to that. So the better budget we get now, knowing that we're going to still be partners going forward, it helps everybody.
Any other questions for us or my staff?
Anything else? Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good, adjourn?
Oh, we can adjourn, yes.
Our budget hearings are